Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening based on where you are listening from. Welcome into the Blue Articles, and my name is Maxwell. The Ugandan President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni has warned of a potential wars in East African region over access to the Indian Ocean, specifically targeting Kenya. Museveni expressed his frustration over Uganda's reliance on neighboring countries, particularly Kenya, for trade infrastructure, and emphasized that his country is entitled to access the ocean. As we know, Uganda is a landlocked country. It's not geographically accessible to the ocean, except the lake, that is Lake Victoria. And so the president demands that his country should have an access by force to the Indian Ocean. And so what would that lead to? It would lead to wars, because Kenya might not be willing to lose their land or give Uganda access to the sea. That means Kenya is going to give part of it to Uganda so that Uganda can access the sea. So Museveni said it was madness for landlocked countries to like Uganda to be denied access to the sea, insisting that the Indian Ocean belongs unto him. So this statement has sparked outrage across the region, warning of potential wars in East African region to secure Uganda's access to the Indian Ocean. This statement widely interpreted as a veiled threat against Kenya. We know that Kenya and Uganda have had disputes over several factors, one of them being Migingo Highland that is situated in the Lake Victoria. Kenya and Uganda has had dispute over the Migingo Highland, who owns the island. Though the matter has been solved, but there are problems still roaming around when fishermen are arrested for having crossed the border within the lake. But now it is quite ironical that Uganda now needs an access to the Indian Ocean when the Migingo Highland belongs to them. The president was speaking during his campaign in a radio interview in Mbale City. Museveni said it was madness for a landlocked country like Uganda to be denied access to the sea, insisting that Indian Ocean belongs to him because his country's economic and security interest. And he quoted by saying, I quote, he said, I quote, "Even if you want to build a navy, how can you do so without access to the sea? That ocean belongs to me because it is my ocean. I'm entitled to it. In the future, we are going to have wars." So that was the declaration from the president of Uganda. And his remarks were seen as a direct sweep at Kenya, which remains Uganda's main trade logistic corridor to the global markets. I have just reminded you of the dispute between Kenya and Uganda over the Migingo Highland, where Uganda claims that Migingo belongs to them. And now today, Uganda is again claiming that the Indian Ocean belongs to them. So that means everything belongs to Uganda. So Museveni's outburst mirror tensions elsewhere in the region, with Ethiopia and Somalia already embroiled in a dispute over maritime access. In early 2024, Addis Ababa signed a controversial port and security deal with Somaliland, a move Mogadishu condemned as a violation of its sovereignty. Ethiopia defended the argument as a matter of national necessity. Sometimes it is easier when you need it, but not when you are giving it. So, echoing this logic, Museveni accused African leaders of maintaining an irrational political order that leaves landlocked countries economically disadvantaged. That would be the point of support towards the interest of the Ugandan president, and I would still insist on this. There is a time that Uganda claimed that a big part of Kenya belonged to them, that is from Busia border to Nakuru. that is roughly 300 kilometers into the Kenyan territory. And so Uganda has had issues, not once or twice. It is an issue that has been there over time. So the president expressed deep frustration with Kenya over what he termed endless delay in implementing projects designed to facilitate Uganda's trade route, such as Eldoret-Kampala oil pipeline and railway network. I quote what the president said, "You are stuck. How do I export my products? This is why we have had endless discussion with Kenya, the railway, the pipeline, but that ocean belongs to me," Museveni said, reiterating his claim of entitlement to the Indian Ocean. So the two neighboring countries have had recurring trade tension, including a protracted standoff over Uganda's right to import refined petroleum product through Kenya. That was in March last year, when President William Ruto administration agreed to license Uganda National Oil Company to import oil directly via Mombasa using Kenya's pipeline infrastructure. The move followed a legal dispute that saw Uganda sue Kenya at the East African Court of Justice. The leaders also agreed to jointly extend the Eldoret-Kampala oil pipeline to cut fuel costs and improve supply efficiency. However, the project remained stalled, prompting Museveni's renewed criticism. Analysts interpret his remark as both a campaign tactic and strategic warning to Nairobi as Uganda heads to election in January 2026. That may be true because Uganda might not want Kenya to meddle within their election processing, and that would be like a warning to keep Kenya off. But it is said that a barking dog never bites. And so based on the statement that the president actually gave as a warning threat to the nation of Kenya, people have remained to have a lot of thoughts rolling down their minds. Why would the president of Uganda aggressively approach Kenya in such a way? So by the statement that the president said that in future we are going to have wars. So due to inequitable control of regional trade routes and maritime access. So that means the president of Uganda is determined to access the maritime routes by all the means, even if it means war. Though at times it is said that it is not good to actually show off before the real time or before getting to know the potential of your opponent. For we know that militarily Kenya might be more equipped than Uganda. I fail to understand why the dictator is trying to approach Kenya with the angle of war. So the reasons as why these statements would have brought tensions is because Uganda lacked direct access to the sea, relying on Kenya's port of Mombasa for international trade. So for all the products that are being imported in Uganda by sea, Uganda relies on Kenya. And so this might actually be the reason for the tension, because you want to fight against somebody that is a very, very strategic ally to you, somebody that you depend on to do importation. And so these are the kind of the threats that never bears good fruits. So I believe that such matters, when they rise, there should be solutions that can be found, of which, as for me, I would propose for the diplomatic resolution. So Museveni advocates for the regional integration and cooperation to ensure equal access to the Indian Ocean for landlocked countries like Uganda. But Kenya have got a lot of questions to ask. If Uganda claimed the highland of Migingo belonged to them, why should now the ocean belong to us? That is irrational. Yes, I believe that the two countries need to be very fair, because it can't be that Migingo belongs to Uganda but Indian Ocean belongs to both Kenya and Uganda. But when you look at Migingo Highland, it lies between the border of Kenya and Uganda. But Indian Ocean is far east. You have to cross the whole land of Kenya. That's when you get to the Indian Ocean. And now that is called a provocation attack. You're provoking a neighbor who does not have anything against you. So the dispute has historical roots dating back into 1970s when Kenya blocked Uganda cargo routes under Idi Amin's regime. So it might be a rage that has been there over time. The tension between Uganda and Kenya has been escalating, with Museveni's recent remarks sparking outrage and debates across East Africa. According to my implication, I would say that the threat of war highlights the need for diplomatic solutions to address long-standing issues between Kenya and Uganda. This is not an issue that is rising now. This is an issue that has been there over time. It is not the issue that was brought by the Berlin Conference when Africa was divided. No. It is an issue that has been there between Kenya and Uganda. Uganda feels like Kenya cannot be superior than us. Though in most cases, Kenya tends to bend low as the big brother. But Uganda keeps provoking, and that is quite unfortunate. Because when you are so aggressive and you are sure you might end up losing. So any disruption to trade between the two countries would have significant economic implications for Uganda, which relies heavily on Kenya. It is good to understand that today, if Uganda happens to wage war with Kenya, Uganda might lose more than Kenya, because Uganda would still depend on Kenya for the Indian Ocean Mombasa port or the Lamu port. And that would need a very strong diplomatic ties for the two countries to keep trading together. Because if the two countries fails to agree, then that simply translates into we are not going to do a business. And so where is Uganda going to have their goods imported into their countries? Through what corridor? The situation underscores the importance of regional cooperation and integration to prevent conflict and promote the shared prosperity. It would have been good for Kenya and Uganda to make peace because the two countries would need each other. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for find your time to watch. Kindly remember to